Hi students, this is Mrs. King again. Okay, so this week you have a decimal QR code assignment, and it is 24 problems, and on Monday you are supposed to do 1 through 12, and on Tuesday you're going to do a quizzes on decimals, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. Wednesday, you're coming back to this assignment, this QR code activity, and you're going to finish numbers 13 through 24. So I thought maybe I would do a couple problems from the homework. So I'm going to work on 3 problems, number 6, number 15, and number 16, okay? All right, so here we go. Number 6, it says 98 minus 17 and 98 hundredths. And the same rule applies for adding and subtracting decimals. The main idea of adding and subtracting decimals is that you need to line up the decimal points. So I deliberately chose this one because 98 is a whole number. It doesn't show any decimal point. So I'm sure a lot of you already know this. This is a review, but there is a decimal sort of hidden behind the ones digit right here. So I'm going to write the same problem vertically, and to line up the decimal points, this is what you need to do. You need to write 98, and here's the decimal point. Now, before I add any zeros, I'm going to actually write the other part. So I'm going to write 98 minus 17, put a decimal point right there, and 98 hundredths. So then now that my decimal points are lined up, if I have any empty spaces, I need to fill those empty spaces with 0. Okay, so if you notice, my decimal points are nicely lined up. Okay, so now I'm going to just simply solve the problem. I cannot subtract 8 from 0, so I need to borrow from the next digit, but that's another 0, so I'm going to borrow from here. So I have a 7, and technically I get a 10 here, but since I need to borrow again, I'm gonna get a 9 and a 10. Now I'm ready to subtract. So 10 minus 8 is 2, 9 minus 9 is 0. Bring the decimal point down. 7 minus 7 is 0, and 9 minus 1 is 8. So your answer is 80 and 2 hundredths. And then, of course, you would nicely box that answer. Okay, so, and the same rule applies for adding decimals. All right, so now for multiplying decimals, now you don't have to line up the decimal points. Sometimes if you have the same number of decimal digits, then you will have you will line up the decimal points, but you definitely don't have to. So again, I chose this problem, so I'm going to write them vertically. 5 and 4 hundredths times, now if this was adding or subtracting, then I would write 3 and 3 tenths and add a 0. But since this is just a multiplication, I don't need to line up the decimals. So I'm going to write 3 and 3 tenths right here. So sort of line them up against this wall right here to the right. Okay, now I'm going to multiply them as if they're just regular numbers. So here we go. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 0 is 0 plus 1, so 1. 3 times 5 is 15. I X out for the placeholder. You can just put a 0 here if you would like. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 0 is 0 plus 1 is 1. And 3 times 5 is 15. We need to add them up. So I get 2, 3, 6, 6, 1, and then we have our last step, which is we need to count the number of decimal places from each of these factors. So I have 1, 2, 3 decimal places. So I'm going to move over 1, 2, 3 times to the left, put a decimal point right there. So my answer is 16 and 632 thousandths. And circle or box that answer. All right. Okay. Finally, I'm going to do a quick review on dividing decimals. So when you're dividing a decimal, this is called a dividend. And the second number right here, the 42 hundredths, this is called the divisor. Okay, so if you were to do in and out, your dividend goes in and your divisor goes out. And so it goes in and out. Now, this divisor right here, this is the number that cannot be a decimal. Okay, so if you were to write this problem, you would write 96 and 6/10 divided by 42 hundredths, 0.42. Now again, I said that the divisor cannot be a decimal. So to make this a whole number, I will be technically multiplying this by 100, but we're going to take a shortcut. So we're just going to move this decimal place to the right twice, which would make this 42. But whenever we do that to the divisor, we need to do the same thing to the dividend. So I'm going to start at the decimal point, move 2 times to the right. I have an empty space, so I'm going to put a 0. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite the problem. So I have 9,660 divided by 42. Now, sometimes, even though you make the divisor a whole number, this number might have a decimal point, and that is okay. What you do is, like, let's say I have a decimal point right here. All I do is simply move the decimal point right above, and you divide as usual, okay? All right, so here we go. 42 does not go into 9. 42 does go into 96 2 times, which is 84. Now I'm going to subtract. And I did that in my head, but, of course, you can just write it here. 6 minus 4 is 2. 9 minus 8 is 1. Bring down the 6. Now 42 goes into 126 3 times. So I chose a easy one. I was hoping it'll be a little bit more complicated than this, but okay, 0 is your remainder. Now, a lot of students make a common mistake, which is students think that this is done, okay? You have this last 0 that you need to bring down, and you need to divide one more time. You have to say 42 goes into 0, 0 times. Okay, so 42 minus 0 is 0. Now your remainder is 0. And so your answer is 230. Okay, all right, so that was short. If you are struggling with any other problems from the QR code activity, let me know, and then I will see if I can do a few other reviews on another day. Okay, all righty. Okay, bye.